Hey everyone, welcome back to Tuesday Tea with me, Alisha Bowker Mudrock. Today I have Lisa joining us from Michigan. She is a therapist and spiritual business coach who helps her clients specifically with developing financially, emotionally, and spiritually fulfilling businesses. She loves to talk about early attachment wounds and how they might impact how one feels about themselves, but also the life events that they often are attracted to. She incorporates those spiritual tools and experience in a very unique way, helping clients overcome limiting beliefs that have been holding them back and really getting them to create that professional and personal life that makes their heart sing. And I'm so excited to have her on today. We actually connected over a fun, I don't even know what it is, like an offer called TheraBundle, where therapists and coaches from all over the world come together to offer their unique services and offers, for lack of a way to use that word again. But it was great to connect with her. And when she talked about some of the things that she specializes in, I was excited to have her here for the end of the year as we're closing out 2024. We're entering into 2025. And I think setting intentions and goals and endings and beginnings on all of our minds. And so I'm going to turn it over to Lisa to talk a little bit more about how we can do something with that mess of thoughts and emotions and what word of wisdom she has around this important and sometimes difficult topic as we close out 2024. So thanks for being here, Lisa.
Thank you so much for having me. I was, when we were initially talking about it, I was like, oh my gosh, this is like perfect. It's like so in line with where I'm at and the stuff that I work on and the stuff I work on, with my clients as well.
Yeah.
Because yes, we're coming up into the season of like whatever New Year's resolutions and how do I want 2025 to be? Because holy crap, like 2024
It
just
was a
seems like it went
dumpster
by in a
fire.
flash, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I love all of that. I'm so big on like self growth and in all areas of life.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that. So I love that people are becoming intentional about that and already starting to think about it. Um, I've just learned from my own experience and my own self healing journey that uh, intentions and mantras and New Year's resolutions, all that stuff are all good things. They're all good. But if we look and pause for a moment about like why do we all make jokes about like, oh, I make a New Year's resolution and then 2 weeks later I quit it.
Yes.
Like, why though?
Yeah.
And my sense is like because while it's good that we're like reaching for something and expanding or whatever, if we don't set it up correctly, sounds like a very perfectionist word. So that just made me cringe. But if we aren't intentional with how we're setting up our intentions, we're going to be much more likely to quit on it or give up on it and think like, oh, that's just not for me or whatever. But what I found is if we combine like a couple of factors, like while we're creating them, they have a
Mm-hmm.
greater likelihood of like, we're going to stick with them, we're going to take actions. And because I like to bring weird energy stuff into everything
I
that I
love it.
do, we will energetically, if we set it up right, will attract things that will help us instead of things that will become obstacles to our goals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's so true. I think it is such a cliche for a reason, but like what you put out there gets returned to you. And I think that energy is very real and whatever label or way you want to call it, it is a thing. And so I think that's such a good point that not only if we make these goals, like you're saying, that are more aligned with our own values or our own energies, but also if we're really living in that alignment, then I love that idea that then the things will just also come. Like I don't have to do all the work. Like stuff will also come to me if I'm doing less but doing more, almost it sounds like.
Absolutely. And the what I found again, sort of like on my own journey with it, is that um so I love the Inside Out movies. I don't know if you're a fan.
So good. I was
I am
watching one on a
like,
plane by myself, like crying, like this adult woman just watching cartoons on the plane crying. I'm like, this is so
of
good.
course,
Especially as a therapist, I'm like, this is so brilliant. I love
it
it.
is so brilliant, right?
Yeah.
So, here's what I love about it. It it made it so much more easy for not only us as therapists, but the general population. And oh my gosh, kids and teens, like that could make me cry, of understanding like we all have different parts in us, right?
Yeah.
So the little people that are bouncing around in her head, but we all have that. So when we go to create like a goal for ourselves, or here's a thing I want to accomplish in the new year, again, that's awesome. But if we're not paying attention to the little parts that are going on inside of us,
Mm.
then what we're not realizing is those parts might not all be in agreement with that goal.
Mm.
And this is the weird energy stuff. Those parts are part of what we're attracting back to us. So for anybody that I guess doesn't know what I'm talking about with the energy stuff, I'm talking about what's known as like the law of attraction. People, often reference like manifesting,
Yeah.
same thing. But what people don't always understand is that law of attraction basically says the energy that I put out there is what I attract back to me like a magnet every single time, whether I'm intending to or not.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes with manifesting, they use that word and they're thinking like, oh, I'm going to create a vision board and I'm just going to create this thing, which again is cool. But what we have to realize is it's happening all the time, even when you're not looking at your vision board.
Right. We're still putting energy out
We're
and still
still putting
attracting
energy out.
things.
Yeah. The other thing that people maybe don't always understand is that it operates off of how we feel, not what we're saying. So it
Mm.
literally creates energy when I'm working with like coaching clients, because I have a coaching business stuff as well. I like literally give them a tool that they can see it literally with their eyes of like, yeah, it literally carries energy like sound waves carry energy.
Mm-hmm.
But so if we're not aware of like our little parts,
Mm-hmm.
those are what's putting out the energy.
Right.
And so I could say, I want to make $1 million next year. Cool. That's a great
Who
goal.
doesn't?
But if I don't pay attention to my parts,
Mm-hmm.
part of me that's like, yeah, right, $1 million. Good luck. Right. It's a disbelief part.
Right. And that's
That's
the thing,
part of
putting
what's,
that energy out
yeah.
there.
I mean, the hopeful part of me, the excited part of me is putting out energy too, but we're kind of muddying the waters if we're
Mm.
not paying attention to the negative belief stuff, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So what obviously I know people come to you for coaching and therapy, like more than just one little talk, but what would be a place to get started to either for folks, how can they either become more aware of what energy they're putting out there, or what's a way to start shifting some of the
Mhm.
unhelpful energy? And I get that's a big question, but maybe like a
Yeah.
bite-sized entry lesson for
Yeah.
folks who are listening.
I think one of the best things that every single one of us can do, including us as therapists, because I didn't realize how often I was not doing this. That
Mm,
came out very weirdly, but is actually intentionally tuning inward and like literally trying to pay attention to our little parts that are in there.
yeah.
Um, and that's actually how I kind of had this aha moment that these different belief parts, our attachment wound parts are part of the equation. Is because at the beginning of the pandemic, my husband and I had the goal of we wanted to get a new house.
Okay.
And financially, we were like, good, like, cool, we're in a space where we can get a new house. So this was right before the pandemic happened. And for anyone that was a part of trying to buy a house during the pandemic, it was a
Yeah.
shit show. It was
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
But what happened was it literally was like 3 years of us looking at houses, making offers on houses, making offers on houses that were well above the asking price. But it was
Right.
such a crazy market that like we literally
Right.
could not get a
It
house.
was like a total gamble.
Oh my God, it was so intense. So at some point, I realized like, okay, here's a goal I want that's not happening. So like
What's
Lisa,
in the
like
way?
put your yes,
Mm-hmm.
what's in the way here? I must have something that is energetically blocking me
Mm-hmm.
from getting this. So what I learned to do was like I sit down, it's not actually meditation, but I sit down and I close my eyes because when I close my eyes, I can pay attention inward so much
Mm-hmm.
really, both
Mm-hmm.
in my mind and like my body will tell me little things, right?
Yeah.
So I sat down and I like closed my eyes and I'm like, okay, I'm going to imagine, I just need to figure out what this is. So I'm just going to like imagine me in my new house, but I wasn't trying to like imagine it. Like sometimes, people again with manifesting will be like, what does it look like? What color is it? Where's the staircase? Whatever. I
Right.
wasn't doing that. I was more like, that's something energetically blocking me. Let me figure out what it is. So I imagined myself in it. And because I know law of attraction based on how it feels, I'm like,
Right.
what does this feel like to be in
Right.
my new house? And so I was like, oh, it's so pretty. I'm so glad that I get to have this open space and I like the yard. And gosh, everything in here is just the way that I like it. I can't believe I get to live here. And as soon as I heard that little sentence, I was like, what? What do you
Mm.
mean you don't
You
believe?
can't believe. Mm-hmm.
And so I literally like, as my eyes are closed, I'm like, what? Why would I believe I don't get to live here? And because I was in this like closed eyes, whatever chill spot, my my logical brain didn't answer. One of my little parts answered. So I say, what do you mean? Why wouldn't you believe that you get to live here? And my little part thought bubble popped in my head that said, Lisa, you can't even get your mom to love you. Why would you believe you get to deserve a house? And I was like,
Wow.
what? But I like immediately started crying and like, holy
Mm-hmm.
shit, what was that?
Mm-hmm. You're
What
like,
was that?
wow. So I was just here trying to imagine my house. Now we're
Right.
getting in my childhood. Like, what's happening?
And so because I'm kind of familiar with this process, I'm like, ooh, okay, like let's let this be here.
Yeah.
And I kind of like apply some of my tools and tricks that I use um to allow the emotion to be there and then, help shifting it away.
Mhm.
Um and after I did that, 2 weeks later, we got a house
Wow.
that was way bigger than the house like 3 years before that, like
Right.
when
That you
we
could bet
initially
on
were
for like way
trying.
more money. Yeah.
And so it was that awareness of this early attachment issue thing was a part of my vibration, even though I had the money in the bank. We were putting the effort in, we were doing all the things right.
Mm-hmm.
And parts of me believed that I could get it, but
One
this
part
little
didn't.
sneaky part, right? And it is so not counterintuitive, but like if you ask me logically or ask me with my eyes open, like Lisa, do you believe your mom loves you? I'd be like, yes, she loved me. But this is part of what I like teach my clients, right? There's a difference between knowing that you're loved and feeling
Feeling
love.
unloved. Mm-hmm.
That part of me, this whatever little kid part of me, knew my mom loved me, but didn't feel loved by her.
Mm,
So it got tied with like my sense of deservedness and what I believe I get to have in this world.
yeah.
So it was like just this great aha moment. And then from there, not only did we get the house, but I'm like, oh, this is like change. This is game changing for how I want to help people
Right.
and teach people and share with people all over the place.
Right. I love that. And I think that this could be such maybe a helpful little exercise for in two parts. One, for maybe folks who find this holiday time a hard time of year. Maybe that's something to like sit and really think about, what's the energy I'm putting out around the holidays in general? Like, what do I want from them? What do they want from me? You know, like trying to maybe kind of consider how to make this a season for you. It doesn't have to be for everyone else, and what that kind of really looks like. And then also, as we're going into the new year, like who is that person in 2025? What are they doing? What's she getting into? Whether it's professionally, where you're living, your relationships, like whatever piece. But I think what a helpful tool to maybe set it through this sort of framework. And even if maybe nothing's changing yet, like you said, though, just being aware of where there are some counter indicative ideas, or where there's some like resistance, to be aware of and to keep, you know, figuring out what you're going to do with that as you go forward, but just to help better understand how to enter the new year and how to kind of close out.
Yeah, because I think so. Gosh, that was a really long answer that I gave you to a simple question of like,
No,
how do
it was a
we
great
pay?
story. I loved it.
So the short answer was like closing our eyes and listening inward more, and like paying attention to what stuff shows up. But once we do that, hopefully, like what I did in that moment was I showed up with great compassion for the part of me that believed that my mom didn't love me. So I showed up with compassion, which helped shift that. But then I also think it's helpful. Sometimes it means we need to like reword our goal a little bit. So what I often say, you know, again, I'm thinking like energetically, is that we want to create a goal that is like obviously pointed in a better feeling direction, like something good.
Yeah.
And it also needs to be like in the realm of believability.
Yes.
So like if again, I kind of used that example earlier of like if I say like I want to make $1 million next year, and enough of my parts are like that's too large of a goal, you're not going to hit that, then energetically I'm going to, when we talk about like self-sabotage, like it's because that goal doesn't align with enough of my parts.
Right.
So if I changed it though, if I softened that goal but still in that direction, I could say I want to make more money next year. I want to have greater financial ease next year, right? So those are very general terms.
Yep.
But then I don't have the same resistance.
Right, because $1 million sounds scarier or whatever in some way than I want less credit card debt, or I want to be more financially free. That feels maybe, okay, we can believe that. Whereas the $1 million sounds like, ooh, I can't believe that for whatever reason.
So totally. Because it's, right, that's like the digging into like our thinking, right? Other people get to earn $1 million. That doesn't feel believable for me. But rather than try to convince myself that I could make $1 million, because that's a way to go with that.
Yeah.
I could try to work on convincing myself that I could earn $1 million.
Yeah.
And or I could also just soften the goal to say, I want to have more financial ease. I want to pay all my bills, the first of them, whatever. Like I can soften it so that it feels believable, because when it feels believable, then I'm going to be more likely to take the action steps, and depending on the goal, I might get excited about it as opposed to coming from a place of fear or dread or whatever.
Yeah. And I like that word you used earlier too, like compassion. And I feel like it's a great thing to circle back in this example as well, that there's nothing wrong with you, or don't feel like you should, or be mad if a goal feels too big or you're stuck or wherever. It's finding that grace and compassion and meeting ourselves where we're at. Because I always say, right, if I'm honest about the starting line I'm starting from, I'm more likely to actually like finish the race, right? If I'm pretending like I'm 3 miles ahead where I'm not, that's 3 miles I don't have in my fuel tank to finish because I pretended I already did it. Or if you're catastrophizing it and you're like, oh, I don't even have my sneakers on, I'm like at home still, and you're not, like, that's not helpful either. So it's kind of just saying, oh, this is where I'm at. Like, don't want to be at this spot forever. No, but like, this is truly where I'm starting from. And now I have the information to work with that and partner with it instead of feeling shame or living in some like, delusional bubble that's also not going to help me if I pretend things are better than they are, or if I'm farther ahead
Oh,
than I am.
totally. I call that like fake sunshiny bullshit. I'm like,
Yes, yes.
your energy and your body knows the
That's
difference,
not
and
real.
it knows like it's not. So authenticity is like super huge. And yes,
Hmm.
like compassion of like, and this is where that Inside Out movie becomes so huge, right? Because we start to learn, oh, they each have a purpose.
Yeah, yeah,
So my little part that believed or couldn't believe that my mom loved me
right.
serves a purpose. I have compassion for her.
Hmm.
She, believe it or not, was like trying to protect me by saying, like, don't don't count on your mom to love you because she doesn't show up all the time.
Right.
So like it's trying to protect me, right? So if we remember all of my parts, even the ones that don't believe great things, are all there to help us in their own
Yeah.
way, or at the very, very least, deserve compassion, then it's like we energetically will soften it. It's like
Hmm.
so beautiful when I am working with somebody and when I experience it myself of like when that compassion comes in,
Mm.
like you just
Yeah,
watch people melt a little bit.
yeah, yeah. And I think especially in this day and age, which this could be a whole different hour-long talk, we're not going to get into totally, but just like with social media and all the information we're bombarded with all the time, like it's so easy to get stuck in these judgment loops, criticism loops, comparison loops, should loops. And I just, at least a lot of the people I work with too, it's almost like people wake up one day and they're like, wait, what am I doing? What are my goals? Who am I? What, like, we're just constantly flooded with other people's agendas and their scripts and their storylines. And I think as women too, we're socialized so often to follow those and caretake and put others first and all the other shit. And then one day we're like, we don't even know who we are anymore, what our story is, right? And so while it is a cliche, I do think like coming up to the end of endings, beginnings. My birthday is also this time of year, so it's like double reflection time. I'm always in my head a
Mhm.
lot right now, but I think it's just it's an important exercise to really ask yourself some of those questions, like what parts are even around anymore? Like, what are they saying? Who am I? What am I trying to do? Where am I trying to go? What do I actually think about some of this stuff? And giving ourselves the permission to even just ask those questions can feel so scary, but it's so powerful and that information is so important. And I think sometimes we're just too busy or too on autopilot or don't even stop to remember we're allowed to ask those things. And so I love that we're just giving people permission to do that. And what a very timely time of year to do it as well, but doing it all the time. But I think it would be such a nice gift to give yourself this time of year as
Oh
well,
my
right?
God, yeah. And I totally agree with you too that um do men struggle with this too? Absolutely.
Of course.
But I think that as as women and you and I are both therapists, so we get like the double dose of
Mm-hmm.
my sense is we have been socialized early on in life to be aware and taking care of other people, which is not a terrible thing, but it means sometimes at the sacrifice of paying attention to ourselves
Yeah.
and actually pausing. I love what you're saying of like actually pausing and going, okay, I think I want this thing, but like, let me pause. Do I actually, or do I think other people think I should have this thing?
Right.
Right. But we've not been encouraged enough, many of us in our lives, to like get
Ask those
curious
questions, think
inward.
those things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
okay that I have my own desires, and it's okay that I do it differently than other people. And it's okay that I'm on my totally own path and other people are on their own path. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so challenging.
And it's okay if like my goals or values or wants don't always line up with everyone else I care and love in my life. That's a different conversation, like a different negotiation, a different observation, but it's okay to like different things, to want different things, to prioritize different things. And sometimes I think even that feels wrong or scary. And then we're living inauthentically, which then those parts that are like, this is total bullshit are loud, and then things are getting in the way. And it actually isn't more peaceful or better. It causes more chaos because we're not being true and honest with who we are and how we're showing up, you know?
And I think for many of us, we're not even aware that we're doing that because
Right.
it got so wired into us that the way I find connection with other people is by conforming or
Yes.
agreeing or
Yes.
helping or people pleasing or all the things, right?
Yep. Yep.
So we are not even always aware that like it's a thing.
That we're on that train. So I think that this is such a great tool, and I'm hope that folks really will use this as we're coming up to the end of this year, thinking about the new year, but really asking the questions you've presented of, you know, like, what is it I'm trying to get? What are my goals? What's even happening here? Like, let me just listen. Like, what's the conversation going on inside my brain if I just slow down for 5 seconds? And then there's so much we can do with that. You don't even have to do anything yet, but just again, that information alone is the huge first step and leads and opens so many more doors and shifts in both energy, uh, motivations, dreams, relationships. Like it, I think it really sets everyone up for some really huge, incredible things that could come your way with not as much effort. Like it's not like so many things have to change. It's just the way in which we're seeing it and experiencing it and living it. And I think it's more subtle and easy, I'm gonna put that in quotes, but then it sounds. We just have to stop and like put in a little bit of that work.
Yeah, but I'm totally on board with you that like we need to stop and put in a little bit of that work, that effort. But even with the slightest shift, even so my one example is like kind of a dramatic one because like all of a sudden I get a house. But the when we have that little shift in compassion and awareness of like, oh, I need to be kinder to myself, whatever, then energetically, it's like the coolest shit happens, right? Where like all of a sudden people show up on your path that are the answer you've been looking for. Or I have this all the time where like the book I'll be reading, which will be like a novel, or the TV show I'm watching will drop this like bomb of wisdom or whatever. And I'm like, holy cow, look at that.
Yeah.
Or whatever, like all of a sudden money comes your way that you're not like crazy shit happens because energetically, like things are, we've shifted it enough. It doesn't have to be perfection.
No.
But like cool stuff happens to help
100%.
us with our goals, whether it's whatever. I know people get really, really conscious about their health, whatever, but like all of a sudden a friend asks you, hey, do you want to do a drumming class with me? And whatever, like stuff happens to line up to help you with your goals when you do just a little bit of cleaning up of your energy.
Yes. I always love, I feel like I had a client that said this to me, but it was like we were talking about, you know, right place, right time. And they were saying, you know, she's like, I always feel like it's the universe like giving me a high five. Like I'm on the right path. And I personally, like in my life, I could give 1,000 stories of just like weird people are always like, you're kind of lucky or whatever. I'm like, no, I'm just open and I just kind of am aware and then shit happens. And I'm like, yep, that's the door. And like it's not a hard choice to make when you're in that flow. But yes, things come to you. And I still think of that too, of like, high five, universe, like, cool, we're in the right spot, right? It's just such a nice reminder and return on putting that work in to keep realigning and thinking and being aware. But it's tenfold for not a ton of extra work. And it's actually like very rewarding work if you do want to engage in it, you know? So
yeah, it's like, man, not that there's anything wrong with like reading books or whatever, but like you could read 12 books on how to make $1 million or read one book and clean up your energy and whatever. Like it's so much less work than what we realize if we're operating from the right understanding that like it's about the emotional stuff, not just the
the head stuff, because that's an easier place to live. But not the only part of us. We have that whole other part too. So
There's so much wisdom in this other part that I think
I
we just
know.
don't pay attention to. Again, I'm like, women especially have been, I
Told
think,
to like
are more intuitive,
tamp that
right? And
down.
this is where mother's intuition and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
We
The
get
witches or what, like what they're all usually female because it's bad in a lot
feminine
of these
energy.
examples, but it's not bad. But
Right.
yes, that intuition piece we've been told is tried to stamp out of us. Because God forbid we all lived in that. The world would be a very different place.
Right. Oh my goodness.
Well, this has been so fun. We could keep talking forever, but what would be one takeaway or thing you really want to leave folks with? I know we've said a lot, but like if we had to drop them with one last wisdom bomb, what would be that thing you want to leave people with?
Yeah, I'm like, wow, we did cover a lot. And I'm like, um, yeah, so I talk a lot, but
Same.
because I talk a lot, I also like to have things down on paper because yeah, sometimes I like the steps and things like that. So, for anyone that wants it, like I created I think there are 7 steps. So it's like 7 steps on how you can energetically align yourself with your goals. So it's some of the stuff we've talked about today, but some additional pieces in there too about how to tune in and how to soften the goals and looking for the evidence and the proof. But for people that couldn't follow all my stuff today, like I'm totally, I jotted all that stuff down and I'm totally, would be delighted to share it with anybody who wants to. So they can
I love
absolutely
it.
grab that.
Okay, and that link will definitely be in the newsletter, so you can click on that to follow Talisa's page to get the free resource. And is there anything else you want to promote or let folks know about that you offer or services that you provide?
Well, if you're in the state of Michigan, I am a therapist there, but the beautiful part about having both is I do that in only the state of Michigan, but then my coaching stuff is all over the place. So sometimes when people are tuning in and paying attention to all those parts, right, it requires a little bit more support or effort. So,
Mm-hmm.
they can always reach out with some of my coaching stuff as well. It's kind of the same stuff. So of like, how do we listen to those unhealed attachment wound stuff and use some energetic stuff to move them along.
I love it. Yeah, and her website will be in there too, so you can pop over, keep in touch with her, reach out if you're looking for some of that extra support, at least the coaching piece and therapy if you're in Michigan. And I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. What a rich and beautiful conversation. And I hope everyone has a great rest of their week. And I'll see you back here next week.
Thanks so much.